I am so pumped to be talking about today's questions. It is one of my favorite ones, and I'm going to share my secret weapon with you. So hang on to your hats for that, and we'll get into it. But let's look at how to witness to an atheist. And like I said, I'm going to share my secret weapon with you on this from the Bible that I think is really going to change the way you approach atheists. But
oh, really? You're here to teach us how to witness to atheists. Well, being an atheist myself, I'm always interested in the new ways that apologists think they can appeal to atheists. My guess is that it's probably not new, and it's probably very condescending. Well, I can't wait to become a Christian because of whatever kind of apologetic approach this guy has. If you want to fuck around and find out exactly how bad this guy's approach is, then please stay tuned. What's up, heathens? My name's Atheists, and I have come here to tell you about the problem of thickness. Now, normally thickness is a good thing in a lot of areas of life, but today we're talking about your thick-ass wallet. I mean, just look at the size of this thing. Don't you hate it when that happens? Well, now you can abracadabra this sumbitch into a new Ridge wallet. It's sleek and small, and it's definitely not gonna try to sodomize you like that big old wallet. It holds up to 12 cards and has enough room for cash on the back. Ladies, you can take your big old thick Michael Kors looking motherfuckers, and you can even abracadabra them too. Ridge wallets provide you with over 30 colors and designs, including rose gold. And of course, one of my favorites, burnt titanium. They're made of a durable material, so they have a lifetime warranty. Have you ever wanted to just shrink this down so it's easier to carry and it doesn't nearly slice your leg off when you get into the car? Abracadabra! See? Now you can shrink down your keys too. So nice and compact, and the keys will fan out really easily. Visit ridge.com/godlessengineer between November 15th and December 10th and get 40% off your purchases. Alright, now go and enjoy your video. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologists' claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a, I guess, new apologetic channel, or it's just one I haven't encountered before. But apparently, everybody's been going about witnessing to atheists all wrong. You know, shouting the whole, you're going to hell, and you need to turn to Jesus now, and believe in Jesus, and all will be forgiven, is not the way to go about it. So I'm quite interested to see what kind of new tactic he has to convince atheists to believe in God, more specifically his God being Jesus and his sacrifice and stuff. I do want to start off by saying something positive. This guy has a fabulous beard. I feel like if he played in a ZZ Top cover band, I would not be surprised. But in any case, let's get on into how he can persuade us to believe in God and Jesus again.
if you came here looking for help, you're trying to witness to an atheist, I'm glad you're here. Let's talk about it. So, jumping right into this, an atheist is someone that doesn't believe there is a God. That is the definition of an atheist.
Oh, I'm so glad we're starting off on a good foot here, because that would be the definition of an atheist. I mean, that doesn't fully describe all atheists, because there are hard atheists, which would be Gnostic atheists. There are soft atheists who are agnostic atheists. I would consider myself in the camp of agnostic atheists, because I don't know if there is a God or not, but I don't believe in a God. Now, this is very specific to just a general idea of a supernatural being, a deity, an intelligent being, or anything like that. So that's for the very generic idea of a God. For the specific definition of a God, like, let's say, Christianity, I would have to go the hard atheist route, or the Gnostic atheist route, because I feel like I have enough knowledge to say that I know that God doesn't exist. Like Jesus, not saying that Jesus didn't exist in history in this particular video. I think for this particular video, responding to this guy, perfectly fine with thinking that Jesus existed in the past and arguing from that point. As far as the Christian religion goes, I know that Jesus didn't resurrect from the dead. At least I have enough evidence to suggest that that didn't happen. Just like I have enough evidence to suggest that I know that their God doesn't exist. Their God seems to be highly illogical, theologically speaking, like within his own book, as well as how the theology of his God applies to the real world. Very broad, like generalized reasons why I'm not convinced by his particular God. Those would be the reasons. But still, I'm glad we're getting off to a good foot. Good start here. Atheists are just those that don't believe in a God. Great. I'm so glad you're steel manning our position.
But let me tell you something that you need to understand going into. And I don't suggest you start a conversation with this, but it's knowledge that you need to interpret this well. First of all, as I like to tell people, the A in atheist stands for angry.
And we immediately go downhill, careening down a hill, no brakes or nothing like that. Somebody has ripped the brake lines out of our truck. Obviously, it's a 1956 Chevy or something like that. So they've ripped the brake lines out of our truck. We can't stop going down this hill because we're just careening into the valley of crazy at this point, because that's not what the A in atheist means. I mean, if we just simply look at the definition of atheist and we just break down the word atheist, A is a prefix, which basically means not this. Theist is someone that believes in God. So it would be not someone that believes in God, or someone that does not believe in God. You could reword it in various ways. So no, atheists are not angry, like that. They're not like angry theists or something like that. Although there are atheists out there that are angry, either with religion or religious people in their lives or anything like that. And that's perfectly fine for you to be angry at religion, religious people, and all that other stuff. One thing, which this is the nuance that I feel needs to be made here, is that he's saying that atheists are mad at God, or in some way they're mad at God, and so they deny that he exists or something like that. That just doesn't make any kind of fucking sense. But also to broadly paint all atheists as angry, that's shitty, dude. Like that's really low. What if I painted all Christians as pedophiles, huh? You wouldn't fucking like that. Oh, just because a few priests out there raped thousands and thousands and thousands of children, and there's a whole organization that's dedicated to shifting these pedophiles around. And even in organizations outside of the Catholic faith, do you find people shifting pedophiles around in the Christian community? Also, not only do you find people in both Catholicism and in Protestantism to be painting the rapists as the victims and feeling sorry for the rapists, while the rape victims are regularly shamed and pushed out of the community and all this other stuff. Never mind all of that. It would just be totally unfair to characterize Christianity as like a sexually abusive cult, wouldn't it? I wouldn't characterize Christians like that, or even Christianity necessarily. But my point is that me characterizing like that is pretty similar to how you're characterizing atheists as all being angry and irrational, which is kind of what he's getting at in this video. Just don't stoop that low, dude. Like, there's no reason to stoop this low and sit there and have you tell us the real reason why we're an atheist, or the real reason why we feel the ways that we do. It's just shitty to do that.
Here's the thing. No one doesn't believe there's a God. Okay,
well, that's just straight up bullshit right there. This is the whole everybody knows God exists. It's just atheists are suppressing the knowledge of God. And that is him again saying, oh, I know you better than you know yourself, so I know that God exists. But really, I feel like it tells us a lot more about the person saying it than the person that it's being said about. Because what it tells me, and I mean, I could be totally wrong about this, obviously. I feel like a person that says this kind of thing, all atheists really know God exists, is that they cannot handle the idea that somebody doesn't believe in God. They can't process reality without the idea of a God existing. And so therefore they can't process the idea of somebody not believing in their God or in any God. And so they have to delude themselves. And yes, I do literally mean that. Anybody that says this kind of stupid shit right here is deluding themselves into thinking, well, everybody knows God exists. They just hate God, or they're angry with God, or some kind of bullshit like that. Whenever somebody says some dumb shit like this, it should really describe them and not the person that they're saying it about.
In fact, this is why we don't have anti-leprechaun or anti-unicorn clubs, because everyone knows leprechauns and unicorns don't exist.
That's not exactly true. I mean, there are people out there that believe that those magical creatures exist. You know, there are still people that believe that leprechauns and fairies and everything like that exist over there in Ireland. There are people that believe the Loch Ness Monster exists. There are people that believe Bigfoot exists. This sounds like a Tim Allen argument. Well, they know God exists because there has to be a God for them not to believe in it. Thank you so much, Tim Allen, for this dumbass line of argumentation. Of course, he wasn't the first one to come up with it. He's just the most recent one, to fucking bring it up. But it's the same kind of thinking here. But more to the point of what he's talking about here, if people were basing a religion around unicorns or leprechauns or anything like that, and they were trying to force other people to believe in their religion or try to force other people through the government to do things that would glorify their particular magical being, I would also have a quote-unquote club or a group of people that would be called a unicornist or a leprechaunist or a whatever in the fuckists. I would be part of that particular club, but considering that there are no religions that base their beliefs around a unicorn except for the invisible pink unicorn fake religion, I really don't think that it's necessary to have those. I don't think it's necessary for anybody to have a whole group dedicated to not believing in unicorns. Unicorns are fucking magical and special, okay? Don't fuck with the unicorns, you sick son of a bitch. That got weirdly defensive of unicorns there. But unicorns are seriously better than Yahweh. Yeah, fuck that guy.
And so we don't create whole social clubs and organizations dedicated to letting little girls and little boys know that there's no such thing as unicorns. There's no such thing as leprechauns. This is why Santa Claus doesn't make half the people mad. We know he doesn't exist. Yeah, sure, he distracts from Jesus, but he doesn't exist. He's not real.
Wait a second. Did he just shit talk Santa Claus? Yeah, that socialist son of a bitch breaking into people's houses and leaving presents. Where does he get all the money for them fucking presents? We know that he doesn't make Xboxes up there in the goddamn North Pole. In all seriousness here, he just shit talked Santa Claus because he distracts from Jesus? Like, I feel like that there are two things that happen around the holidays, okay, as far as the United States goes. One is a celebration of Christmas, right? And that comes with all the commercial aspects of it and like everything that's been sort of secularized through the ages. Santa Claus and giving presents and, hanging up lights and trees and doing all the holiday kind of celebration shit. All of that's really secularized at this point. But and then there's a separate thing for Christians that happen, and that's celebrating the birth of Jesus, which is bullshit. Because even if you took Jesus to be a historical figure, he most likely was not born on December 25th. That's a completely fictitious date that was made up way after the way after he was supposedly born. But even the earliest Christians didn't really even care about Jesus's birth. That was not a fantastical thing. What they really cared about was what's called the Epiphany, or what some people call Little Christmas. That happens on January 6th or something like that. That's when Jesus was supposedly baptized in the Jordan, when Jesus was inhabited by this archangel, the Messiah, and then he wore Jesus's skin like a skinwalker around the place. But that's what was originally celebrated as early as Christians. Now, it's true that they had nativity scenes and everything like that in the Bible and everything. That's a completely different thing than celebrating Jesus's birth. Celebrating Jesus's birth didn't come until way later, when they were trying to mix pagan festivals with Christian festivals. It just so happened to coincide with right around the time that everything else was happening. And so, boom, December 25th. Completely fictitious date. But in any case, I don't think that Santa distracts from worshiping Jesus or praising Jesus or anything like that. I feel like Christians that are getting mad about Santa Claus are really kind of shooting themselves in the foot, because, it was Christians that came up with the whole Santa Claus and the giving of gifts and everything like that. Like, they're the ones that introduced this into their religion. And now, and now the Christians are mad at previous Christians for coming up with this shit. Y'all need to pick a lane. Right? Like, pick a fucking lane. Either invent Christmas as a holiday totally not stolen from other cultures, or don't. Like, just pick a fucking lane, Christians.
And we don't have organizations dedicated to spreading information about how it's not real, writing books about how they're not real, because they're not real, and we all know that. The fact that you're mad at something, the fact that you're against something is actually evidence that it exists.
See, Tim Allen argument right here. That's exactly the argument that Tim Allen used. In case you missed it, here it is.
My older daughter's atheist, and I said, well, philosophically, it's an irony there too, because atheists don't believe in God. Well, there has to be a God for you not to believe in. And my daughter goes,
Now, first of all, nobody's mad at God, at least on the atheist side. Nobody's mad at God. Now, there could be some people that are in the questioning phase, questioning their religion, deconstructing their religion, so they might be mad at God. But as soon as they take up the atheist label, they no longer believe in God. Maybe they're mad at the fact that they were duped into a religion. Maybe they're mad at the fact that they had so many people lying to them for so many years, or what they perceive to be as lying to them. Although I wouldn't automatically assume that people are lying to you about that, because there are so many people that are just indoctrinated into the faith that, they're not lying. They're trying to tell you what they believe about this world, and they were indoctrinated too. Like, they believe in it because that's what they've always known in life. They've never questioned it. They've never had a need to question it, and they don't care to question it. So it's not that they're lying to you. So I don't suggest being mad at somebody for lying to you unless you absolutely know that they're lying to you. But atheists are not mad at God, okay? This is a ridiculous notion. Now, just like I said in the Tim Allen video, there does exist this idea of a Christian God. We're still not mad at this idea of a Christian God. It's just that some atheists come away mad because of being indoctrinated into a religion. But even so, even if we were mad at a God figure, that doesn't mean that that God exists. I mean, I could be mad at fucking Voldemort, or I could be mad at the Wicked Witch of the East, or whatever in the fuck. I could be mad at those characters, and they still not be real. I'm fucking mad at Anakin for slaying all those younglings, but he doesn't exist. But do you kind of see my point? To use your logic, leprechauns would have to exist. Unicorns would have to exist. Now, I get it. There's a little bit of a nuance here, because he's not technically saying that he's against unicorns or leprechauns, but he is against the idea that those things are historically real, or those are real in reality. He is against that idea. So by being against that idea, it inherently means that those things have to exist. You end up going into an argument from absurdity here. This whole argument is just absurd to present. Also, if somebody came to me like this, I think I'd just laugh at them and walk away. Now, that might not be the best reaction to it, but if someone comes up to you and is like, well, there has to be a God for you not to believe in him. Like, if somebody were to seriously come up to me and say that, I wouldn't be able to help myself from laughing. But if you can, try to stifle your laughter and talk them through it. Just saying.
Which is kind of hysterical backfire for the whole atheist worldview. They wouldn't be upset about this. They wouldn't be talking about this if it wasn't real. So that's a really fun fact to start your day off with.
Well, no, I don't think it's a backfire on us, because I feel like you're roasting your own self. This is a self-burn right here, because his own argument proves that unicorns and leprechauns, fairies, the Loch Ness Monster, and Bigfoot are real things in reality. So, I mean, it's not backfiring on me. Not at all. It's backfiring on you there, my man. It's backfiring on you there, my guy.
The reason they're mad about it. And the reason I say that atheists are mad at God, that they don't believe in him, what they're essentially trying to do is get back at God for not doing things the way they want. Most people, when you talk to them about God and you're like, well, hey, why don't you believe in God? Here's how that conversation will go 90% of the time.
Oh man, I cannot wait for this. But nobody's trying to get back at God. We don't believe that douchebag exists. So we're not trying to get back at him or anything like that. This is not a personal grudge between me and your God. I just don't believe that your God exists. It would be like me having a personal grudge against Voldemort, going around trying to plan on how I can fuck up more Voldemort's day, or, maybe Doc Ock. Let's go the Spider-Man direction. Maybe I'm going around thinking about, how can I fuck up Dr. Octopus? Huh? Oh, fuck. How can I really fuck his day up? Maybe if I strap IEDs to each of those little fucking arms he has. I mean, it would be like if I went around doing that. But I'm not going around thinking about how I can fuck God's day up, or fuck, anything about God up. I'm sitting there interacting with my reality. And part of my reality includes dipshits who say things like, oh, there's gotta be a God that exists if you don't believe in him. But okay, let's see. How does he think a conversation with an atheist goes? I'm betting he's wrong.
Well, if God was so good, why did bad things happen? So either he's not good or he's not powerful. What they do is they hit you with the problem of evil.
Well, if an atheist were to hit you with the problem of evil, I do think that that's an issue for your particular definition of a God. I don't think that an atheist, or at least I don't suggest atheists out there, approach anybody with the problem of evil when they're just talking about general ideas about God. Like if you're going to bring up the cosmological argument or the teleological argument or anything like that, I don't think that that's necessarily like an omnibenevolent and omniscient and all the other omni properties. I don't think that that is necessary for those particular arguments. If your particular deity has those omni qualities about them, then it is an illogical description because that deity simply cannot exist. Because of all of the bad shit that happens in our reality, the fact that nature is amoral and it doesn't give a shit about how much suffering it causes or how much suffering we personally perceive. It doesn't care about any of that. It just fucking happens no matter what. Then God is either apathetic to our existence, but more importantly, the existence of life in general, or he's a real shithead and he's not omnibenevolent. Or, I mean, he could be omnibenevolent without the omniscient aspect to him. But how could he be omnibenevolent if he's not omniscient kind of thing? Like if God's omniscient, then he can't be omnibenevolent. If God is omnibenevolent, then he obviously isn't omniscient. So it makes your definition of Yahweh, the Abrahamic God, completely illogical and therefore cannot exist in reality. Now, this guy could rationalize his God in a way that makes him omnibenevolent and omniscient and all this other stuff. He could do that, but then that would be a very specific definition that only he and his group is using, because everybody else, when they say omnibenevolent, they mean something different than what that would mean. So looping back around here, because me going off on rants and shit, don't use the problem of evil for general God definitions. Only use it in the case of a specific definition that includes omnibenevolence and omniscience. That would be the only case to bring up the problem of evil. And I don't think that somebody should become an atheist just because of all the evil in the world. Although if you are convinced by the problem of evil, I think that is also perfectly fine.
Philosophical conundrum for a good while. If God is love, if God is good, if God is powerful, why do bad things happen in the world? There are a lot of answers to that.
There are a lot of answers to that. All of them are bullshit. All of them are trying to either redefine what good is or redefine what omniscient means, or it's going to make you rationalize horrible shit happening for good reasons. All of those are bad options.
My favorite being that God is using man's sinfulness to display his glory and love for us in an even brighter way.
Well, that's some bullshit right there. God is using man's sin, which, by the way, sin is just disobeying God. It's not actually anything immoral necessarily. Are there some things that are considered sins that we would also consider to be immoral? Sure, but that doesn't mean that the concept of sin directly tracks to what is moral and immoral. Sin, the whole idea of sin is just transgressing God, like doing something that God doesn't want you to do. So if God wants you to go into a village and kill everybody there, including little babies and small children, then you should do that. That's a good action. You would have to argue that it's good that you go and you kill those children, just like William Lane Craig has done.
That God has the right to give and take life as he sees fit. Children die all the time, every day. People's lives are cut short. God is under no obligation whatsoever to prolong anyone's life another second. So he has the right to give and take life as he chooses. Moreover, if you believe, as I do, in the salvation of infants or children who die, what that meant was that the death of these children meant their salvation. They were the recipients of an infinite good as a result of their earthly phase of life being terminated. The problem is that people look at this from a naturalistic perspective and think life ends at the grave. But in fact, this was the salvation of these children and would be far better for them than continuing to be raised, say, in this reprobate Canaanite culture.
I don't know about y'all, but I really don't see myself ever holding a belief that would cause me to say that that is a good thing. But also, this brings up another question. If God is all-knowing, if he's omniscient, then shouldn't he know how to emphasize his glory in a way that doesn't include using our quote-unquote sin or the shitty things that man has done? Like, don't you think that God would be able to figure out a way to, like, emphasize himself without doing that? Like, this feels like a really easy thing for an all-powerful and all-knowing deity that created the entire fucking universe to do, right? That's right, baby. Fuck that God. Yahweh can go fuck himself, the bitch.
You can't see light if there's no such thing as darkness. There's an equal and opposite thing for everything. That's one of my favorite answers for the problem of evil. We can go into depth into that more.
Oh, okay. I'm so glad that we can go into that more, but you probably are not. But in any case, all of those are subjective things, like light and dark and everything like that. Like, those are things that we have created as human beings. Like, those are our subjective experiences. Each individual person has their own idea of what is light and dark, or good and bad, moral and immoral. We all have our own definitions of what those things are. So those are definitely things that we create. The universe, reality in general, nature is amoral, or it's indifferent to any of that shit.
But atheists are angry at God for not doing things the way they want them done.
Well, it's not that we're angry at God for not doing things that we want them to do. We're just not convinced that that God exists, because he's obviously not choosing the best possible solution when we, very finite creatures that don't have omniscience, can think of better ways to accomplish the same shit without the needless suffering that God seems to create in your particular worldview. So if we can think of a better way to it, then God definitely can. If God definitely can, then that means that he's either not omniscient or he's not omnibenevolent, and he's just a dick up there sitting in his lazy boy.
So when you start dealing with an atheist, what I like to do is look at classical apologetics for starters, and then move into presuppositional apologetics.
Oh, that's his game plan right here. So so if I get your bullshit tactics right, you're going to start up here with classical apologetics that we've all already kind of figured out. We've had to work out for ourselves, and we've heard since we were little babies shitting in our own diapers. And then you're going to move right into presuppositional apologetics that we've already been able to identify as bullshit, because you got to start off with the whole idea that God exists in the first place, therefore negating your first little tactic here of going to classical apologetics. See, here's where you fucked up at, okay? You got to go from presuppositional apologetics and then directly into classical apologetics, because see, you have a problem with prefixes there, okay? Because pre means before. So maybe you should put presuppositional apologetics before classical apologetics. That's where your whole tactic right there is pretty fucked up.
I'm going to talk about what those two things are in just a minute. In fact, the presuppositional is my secret weapon, and I'm excited to tell you about that.
Presuppositional is his secret weapon. Can I let you in on a secret? Presuppositional apologetics isn't a fucking secret. Everybody knows about it, and everybody knows how it's bullshit. And there's your secret of the day.
Classical apologetics, there's several great arguments to come across this. My favorite argument is the watch in the field argument. And so when I dealt with some atheists actually on the boardwalk of New Jersey not too long ago, I used this illustration. I said, if you were going in a field and you found a watch in that field, how do you think that watch got there? And they both said, somebody must have dropped their watch. And I said, what?
Oh, yeah. If I was on the street, I'd be like, well, I'm fairly obvious that Jimmy and Bobby Sue were fucking in the field, and they obviously had to take off their Fitbits in order to get that right fuck position going. He didn't want to give her a black eye because he doesn't want that kind of, like, you know, sort of rumor going around the place. So anyways, Bobby Sue and Jimmy were fucking in the field. He had to take off his watch, and boom, Bob's your uncle. There you go. I don't know where the uncle comes in at. Probably near the end.
You mean you don't think this is a watch field, and if I fertilize it and plow it and water it, that it'll start growing Rolexes and I'll get rich harvesting my watches? And they're like, that's stupid. And I'm like, exactly.
Well, yes, it's stupid, but also he said plow in the field. Giggity. This is a really dumb argument because it's, for one thing, a straw man argument as far as like proof for God, or maybe like I don't know. It feels very strawy to me, like an easily knocked down thing to present, because I guess maybe the reason it feels that way is because he's like, I'm going to approach an atheist and propose this really ridiculous thing about a watch in a field and ask him, do you expect watches to just grow naturally in the wild? Is this a Rolex field, or is this one of them cheap ass Timex fields? It's a straw man to present it that way because you're obviously trying to lead the person in a particular direction. If you don't allow them to actually explain why that doesn't make sense, then you're obviously just trying to lead the person in a specific direction to tell a narrative that you want to tell so that you'll convince them in some kind of way. The reason why that this is all bullshit, the whole either watch in the field, watch on the sand, this is Paley's watchmaker argument or whatever in the fuck. Basically, we have natural processes to explain how, flowers grow, or how vegetation grows, and how planets form, how universes form, and all this other stuff. We have natural processes that explain these things, but we don't have a natural process to explain why watches would just naturally grow in a field. We have a natural process for how watches are made, and that's by, obviously human hands making them. To then try to transition that into some kind of natural setting where the watches are just naturally grown, that's a bit ridiculous. Although if you wanted to talk about natural clocks, we could definitely do that, because radiometric dating is, basically illuminates the natural clocks that do exist in this world. The decay of radiometric isotopes actually provide a pretty solid clock for dating how old things are, how long things have been around since they formed, and all this other stuff. That's how we know that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old and shit like that. There's several different ways that we could go about this whole natural clock situation, but in the way that he presented it, it's bullshit, because we don't have natural processes to explain why clocks grow on trees or something like that. Although again, trees have those rings which we can use to determine how long the tree has been living. So, that would be a natural clock. It's not in the same way that, like a Timex or a Rolex, but that is a natural clock right there. Well, shit. But y'all get what I mean.
So the fact that there's something that's clearly designed in the middle of a field where we know if you left a barn out in that field for 100 years, it'd just disintegrate into nothing. We know that for a watch to be there, someone dropped the watch. We know there's a God because we have intelligently designed things all around us. We know these things don't pop up from nothing. We've never been walking around the road and bam, molecules align to give us a new car. It doesn't work that way.
Well, true, that's not our general experience, but I wouldn't necessarily rule that out entirely. There could be some other kind of situation at play there. Well, what if the Star Trek Enterprise crew came by and beamed a car right down in front of us? It would appear to self-arrange molecules out of nothing when there's really this larger process to explain it, but it would appear that way. And I don't think that there's anything in physics or the natural world that would prevent that particular situation from happening. But in any case, he's trying to compare man-made objects to natural objects. And I would love to know how he determines between intelligently designed objects and not intelligently designed objects, or is just everything intelligently designed, which really kind of makes that whole designation useless, doesn't it? If everything's intelligently designed, then it's kind of pointless to say everything's intelligently designed. If there's no way to determine between intelligently designed things and non-intelligently designed things, then what good is this argument at all? So that's the first thing that he kind of has to answer with this distinction between those two items, so that we could know that something was intelligently designed. Also, how do you explain the fact that we have natural processes to explain all of the natural things that happen in reality, and none of those require supernatural intervention from God? I've commonly heard some apologists say that, natural processes require God in order to work. That's the entire reason why natural processes operate like they do. But that's just an ad hoc assertion that has no basis in reality. They have no evidence to suggest God is needed in order for natural processes hypothesis to work. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense for him to be comparing these two categories of things when he really can't even distinguish between either category.
And so even atheists have to apply their own logic to try to understand these things. And I always challenge the atheists, hey, if you wouldn't use this logic to explain a watch in a field, why would you use this logic to answer away your problem of an eternal destination and God that immediately affects you right here on earth?
I mean, I don't understand how the whole intelligently designed shit argument plays into what you just led into there. Like I don't use that logic in general, like the whole logic that he laid out with the watch in the field thing. Like that's like none of that is anything that an atheist would say. And it's also not the argument that science makes for natural processes as the explanation for why natural things exist. That has no bearing on anything that atheists say. It is actually everything that theists like this guy says, because this guy right here thinks that it's illogical to think that natural processes don't require a God when we have no evidence to suggest that God is required, therefore making it illogical to suppose that a God is necessary when you have no evidence to suggest that a God is necessary. So in this entire thing, it's not the atheists that are being illogical. It's this guy.
And they usually just kind of blow that off or whatever. And that's fine. That's their issue. But here's the secret weapon. And here's what I like to point people to. Number one is every atheist deep down actually believes two things. They know they have an eternal destination, and they know they are guilty before God.
No. You see, yes, honey, you're right. That is stupid. A totally dumbass statement to make right there. For one thing, I don't know that there's an eternal place or anything like there's an eternal afterlife. I don't know these things. So I don't know why you would tell me what I know, even though I know what I know. It just kind of makes you look like a dickhead to say that, oh, you really know that there's a heaven and a hell. No, I don't. I don't know that. So stop telling me, what I know, dick. But also, I would not feel guilty before God. If his God is the God that exists, I would definitely not feel guilty, because his God is kind of an asshole. Actually, no, not even kind of. He's definitely an asshole. In the Old Testament, God commands the Israelites to go in and kill small children and babies, which, as we all know, William Lane Craig's perfectly fine and happy with that. I would not feel guilty in front of God because I know, hey, maybe I've done some bad things in my life. But you know what I haven't done? Told people to go and kill babies. That's what I've not done. So therefore, I feel so much more morally superior than Yahweh. Oh, good point there, honey. I have also not committed a genocide by flooding the world. I also have not forced a family to fuck themselves silly into populating the earth. That's also something that I have not done. There's plenty of things in the Old Testament and the New Testament that I have not done. I have a son, and I do not foresee myself forcing him to put himself up on a cross just to change my opinion about sin.
And this is your secret weapon because the Bible tells us about it.
So wait a second. Let's go back to the drawing board here. Let's go back to the play-by-play on this, okay? So basically, you start here, atheists know God exists, and atheists know there's a heaven and hell. And then you go, how do we know this? Well, because the Bible says so. And how do we know the Bible's right? Well, then you just sort of draw a little circle up on itself, and it's because the Bible tells us so. And so you just keep going in a loop right there. You start over here, and then you go right here, and then you're stuck. You just got one rudder, or one paddle. Sorry, not rudder. You got one paddle that you're paddling with, and you're just going in a fucking circle at that point. Oh, how do we know this? Well, the Bible says it. Oh, how do we know that the Bible's right? Well, because the Bible says it. And how do we know that's right? Well, because the Bible says it. For the Bible tells me so. Spank my ass and call me Israel.
Both of these verses, we know that the law of God is written on the heart of man. We know that every man knows that he is destined for an eternity.
Well, again, for the Bible tells me so. I mean, this is just the Bible saying that people know these things, but there's no proof offered in either of these verses. Like, there's nothing that suggests that anybody knows these things just inherently. I mean, these things are taught. You have to teach children these things in order for them to know about them.
Somewhere, and they know that deep down. So I actually really prefer a Ray Comfort based style of evangelism.
This explains so much at this point. I mean, I see it. He's just a ZZ Top version of fucking Ray Comfort.
If you are not familiar with Ray Comfort, the Living Waters YouTube channel is kind of the main place I go to see that. I've watched a bunch of their videos with youth groups and stuff to help.
Oh, did you see the one where Ray talks about how I almost made him puke? It was because I pantomime sucking Jesus dick.
Train kids in evangelism, but Ray Comfort has a great way. He works people down the idea that they can make mistakes.
So my lovely wife just brought up a really good point in the middle of this guy's bullshit, and that's, why do you have to train kids if they just innately know that there is a heaven and hell and that God's law is written on their hearts? Why do you have to train them in order for them to know it if they already know it, like, just by default? I feel like this is another one of those self-burns here, because you're just fucking your own self up in this video.
So they shouldn't be the ultimate authority. He works down the ideas of we all stand guilty before God and we need a savior. He's really great at that. But when you are approaching an atheist, here's my thing. Number one, you need to know they actually believe God exists. And that's something you need to keep in your back pocket. They're mad at God. Look for the hurt. Because when you can find the emotional force that's driving their argument and realize that this is not a logic-based argument, because logically, duh, there's a God. This is an emotionally based argument. That's where you're actually going to minister to the person. And
so let me get this straight. Your first suggestion for witnessing to atheists is find where they're vulnerable and exploit it? You're right, honey. He is a condescending prick. She said, I'm not being emotional. I'm just spitting facts, yo. I feel like this really does kind of make him a bit shitty in this respect. Like this is just a shitty tactic. I'll say that. This is a really shitty tactic, because you're telling people to exploit people at their most vulnerable. Like find out what makes somebody vulnerable and then exploit it to convince them that God exists. And painting atheists as just being emotional wrecks that are mad at God for one reason or another. And so you got to go in there and you got to twist that knife a little bit more in order to bring them back to God. I mean, that's just emotionally toxic. And it's just a really bad way to go about any of this.
There's a good chance that if you can minister to them and their hurt and their need and their anger, that's actually going to be a better place to start before trying to logically convince them of constructs they're not capable of understanding because they're so emotionally involved in their hurt and their pain.
So basically you have to exploit wherever they're hurt the most first, break them down before they can buy your bullshit. That's what I'm hearing, is that you have to exploit their hurt first and get them to a place where they'll accept your logically fallacious explanation for God. And as soon as they're in a position to just willfully accept that, that's when you spring your bullshit on them. KC doesn't like your ass. Just saying, spitting facts.
So start by ministering to them there. Maybe you want to use some classical apologetics to frame the argument and make a worldview where they understand logically, scientifically, the best explanation for how we're here is that there was a God, but then move into your secret weapon.
Well, obviously, there are no logically valid or scientifically valid arguments for God. If there were, then everybody would know about them, and nobody knows about them other than the Christians out there. But I say Christians because he's specifically talking about his version of God, right? Because he's bringing up all these Bible verses. He's saying that we're guilty before God and that we need God and all this other stuff. So, I mean, he's obviously talking about his own religion here, but it's kind of weird and odd how he tries to paint it as like logical and scientific and shit when it's anything but that. Like the Bible is very anti-scientific in shit that it teaches.
Know that deep down, they know they have an eternal destination. Deep down, they know they have violated the laws of God and they need help.
I don't need help from you or your God or anybody in the Christian camp. I don't need help. And I also don't feel like I've sinned against God because I don't believe that God exists. Sin is just doing things that God don't like. And most of the things that God don't like are a little irrational or sometimes very irrational. So, I mean, it's not as clear cut as he's trying to make it out to be, obviously. He's trying to formulate his argument in a way that makes it sound like all of this is very logically sound, but it's not, because obviously I don't believe in God, and it's not that I am repressing the knowledge of God. I am just not convinced by it. My suggestion, if you're a Christian and you're watching this, and you're an apologist and you're watching this, and you've made it this far, congratulations for making it this far, for one. For two, don't do what this asshole is telling you to do. It's just going to turn people away. It's just going to make people not listen to you, and you're not going to get anywhere with them, with the conversation or anything like that. You're just going to come off as a dick bag, a bag of dicks if you want to be passive about it. It's a very technical term here that we use in atheism.
And then we just have faith, because the best answer for all of our problems is, in the words of Andre Crouch, Jesus is the answer for the world today.
For the world today.
Jesus fucking Christ, could you normalize your goddamn video? Fuck, you blew me out with Jesus in my ear. I feel like that's a sexual position.
Know that you do have the answer.
Jesus is not the answer for anything. Like, I don't know why Christians think Jesus is the answer for everything, and faith is our best tool to use in order to convince people of our bullshit. Faith is what you rely on when you don't have evidence for it. Like, I know that there are some Christians out there that feel like they have evidence-backed faith, where their faith is evidence-based. But ultimately, with the whole God belief, what faith is believing in it, even though you don't have evidence for it. And I do believe that there are a few choice Bible verses that we could bring up right here where it directly says that in the Bible. I mean, you can't really get around the fact that faith is what you use when you don't have enough evidence to know something is true. You just so happen to believe that it's true despite having no evidence for it. And if your religion is faith-based, that means that you can't have evidence for at least those particular aspects that you feel are faith-based. I mean, it's kind of illogical to suggest that you have scientific evidence for it if it's faith-based, right?
The Bible has the answers to their questions. There's no question an atheist can ask you that the Bible cannot answer well.
Oh, so the Bible can answer any question that we have, huh? Well, can it teach me calculus? Can it teach me what the value of pi is? The Bible does get the value of pi wrong. So, I mean, there's that. You could explain that with just the approximation of ancient peoples, but God's supposed to be fucking all-knowing, right? I think it's pretty obvious that the Bible doesn't have the answers to all the questions, but also even the answers that it does have, I don't think that you're going to necessarily agree with them. Like, when is it okay to kill a child? When is it okay to take a young girl as a sexual slave? When is it okay to kill a rape victim? Try to answer those questions with the Bible. You're going to find that the Bible doesn't have great answers for them.
Now, I didn't say that you can't answer well, but the wonderful thing about engaging with atheists is they'll challenge your worldview. They'll send you back to the Bible. The answers are there, and with help, maybe you need some help, but maybe you find them on your own. Your faith gets strengthened, and you get to learn how to do it better. So confidently go witness to atheists.
I really want to echo this last point here. Definitely, Christians need to get out there and start witnessing to more atheists. Just engage them on the streets or wherever you want to. If you would love to talk to me sometime, just send me an email, john@godlessengineering.com. We can set up a time where I can get you on a stream and we can talk about why you believe in God based solely on presuppositional arguments, classical apologetics, and faith. We could definitely do that because that's kind of what my channel's based on. So make sure you record yourself while you do this too. That way I can look at it later and put it on my channel. That would be super. I appreciate all of the free content you guys are providing for me. It's a little stale out there right now, so if y'all could think up some new shit or something, that would be great too. And also, everybody, Christians and atheists alike, definitely go and read your Bible if you have a Bible. I feel like the Bible is the best, the best reading material that you could have for this whole witnessing to atheist things. Just make sure you have good answers for all those really difficult questions that might come up, that I talked about before. Well, heathens, that is going to be it for me today. All in all, I found this guy in the video to be pretty condescending, and his advice to Christians on how to witness to atheists are just going to end badly. The results are just going to be bad results for him, because he's telling all of the Christians, for one, to speculate or at least tell the atheists what they actually do know or what they actually do believe. And that's going to start the conversation off bad to begin with. Also, this guy is starting these Christians off on a bad foot by telling them things that he thinks are facts but are not actually facts. Oh no, I don't think that this guy's advice should be taken. I feel like his advice for witnessing to atheists will just lead you into uncomfortable conversations where you're going to be put on the spot and you're not going to have good answers for that an atheist would ask. But anyways, I would love to know what y'all think. So definitely go down below. Let me know what you thought about this guy's video. Leave me a comment down there in the comment section. And while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. And don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.